Togsy, and welcome to a special episode of The Platform. This is kind of the story behind the story of what we've been making, and it's to do with a DVD that I found that was footage from a trip in 2004. It's the craziest story, which I'll explain shortly. But then you flash forward to 2018, and I'm in Melbourne to create The Platform, which is a pretty funny story in itself. Warwick Capper and I have been making footage for a long time. We wanted to do a show called Warwick's World. We were on a current affair. We had all this press. We just couldn't quite get it there, which is frustrating. But we went down to Melbourne and we met Michael Kazilny, who was hosting a show on Foxtel, and we actually went on his show. And when I was in the studio that night, I was thinking, man, I could use like the people here and make a different style show. So I came up with The Platform. I got MK to host it. We had some great guests in season 1, all kinds of people sharing some epic stories. And it gave me a chance to show some of the footage that I shot around the world. And this is what I got to show on one of the apps.
Welcome to The Platform. I'm Michael Kazilny. I'm now going to introduce you to one of the finest and kindest human beings I've ever met this lifetime. His name is Togsy, over 25 years experience as an entertainment reporter, and this man's unbelievable. You never know where he is. He loves the travel. He's interviewed Jimmy Barnes, James Woods, and even that guy from Rocky, Paulie. What's his name? Welcome, Togsy.
Hey, MK.
What's that guy from Rocky? What's his name again?
That's Burt Young.
How do you find these people?
Just usually through friends and travelling. You meet someone and someone knows someone, and before you know it, you're kind of sitting in someone's lounge room filming an interview, which is pretty cool.
You're amazing how you found you found this passion. You travel the world like some people grab their surfboards and go on surf trips, but you find celebrities. How did you find? Is it James Woods? James Wood?
Yeah, that was on a trip to America, and I just happened to be. It was actually the first day I was in LA on this trip, and we went to a cafe, and I just saw him sitting there, and yeah, I just sort of went up and said, "Could I film a chat?" And he's like, "What, now?" I said, "Yeah," and just pulled the camera out and shot the interview. Yeah.
And this is James Woods, which just blows me away. Who's a fantastic actor, been in some amazing films.
Thanks. I was just sitting here having a
and we bugged him, and look what happens.
Kidnap me.
Yeah. Are you living your dream? Is this something you always wanted to do, to be an actor? And
Well, I always wanted to be a theater actor, but I never imagined being a movie actor because I was never sort of a good-looking guy like you. I was just sort of like a regular average Joe. And I used to just do theater for fun. I mean, when I was in college, and then I really enjoyed it so much. I thought, well, I'll just give it a try, but it's not too likely. And then the next thing I knew, you know, theater was going well, and I tried out for a movie, and I got the part, and you know, I lucked out, did a couple of TV shows, and just sort of kind of worked my way up through the ranks to get a career. So, and now I love it. I mean, it's a great life. You know, there's what's not to love.
yeah.
You know?
In those times when you sort of had those thoughts going through whether you were going to be right for film,
Right.
was there any times you're almost going to give it up?
Well, I made one promise to myself. I said that if I went to New York with about, I mean, this is 30 years. In fact, I'll tell you exactly when it was. It's 33 years ago, September 5th. Okay, so I was a kid, and I went to New York, and I had like $300 in my pocket.
Yeah.
You know, my rent was like $28 a month, and I said, if I ever take another job besides acting, I'm going to quit the business. And I've never taken another job since. I mean, I had some lean months there, but
Sure.
about 2 months after, I got a job in the theater, and then I got into a play that happened to be a hit, it turned out. And I mean, I was only getting 100 and something a week, but you know, in those days, that was, you know, I could live on that easily. I just had some little one-room apartment, and, you know, struggled, but those are great years, you know. They were great years sort of struggling, just barely sort of living hand to mouth, you know.
What do you know about Australia? Have you been out there?
You know, I've never been there, and I've always wanted to be, because, you know, I know Russell Crowe, and I know, you know, Nicole Kidman, and, you know, I know a lot of people from there, and I've talked to people from there, and they always say it's just great and very, you know, everybody's kind of cool and very equal, and, you know, it's very, in fact, I was offered to shoot a film there just recently, but it's going to interfere with my shooting Giuliani. I'm playing, you know, Rudy Giuliani, the mayor of New York, in a movie soon, so I couldn't do them both. And I wanted to, because everybody says it's just gorgeous there, and the people are great. I mean, I'm not just saying this because you're from Australia.
Well, that'd be
everybody
cool.
says, you know,
I'm sure
they say that women are the most beautiful women on earth, so that's always a good thing. You know, what's not to like?
Another story I got to share in that episode is that of Burt Young, not only a terrific actor, but the letter that he wrote that changed his life and proves once again that anything's possible.
I met this girl, and I wasn't like a wolf type of guy, but she was so beautiful, and she worked in a bar, like on Wednesday night. I'd go every Wednesday for a month. She'd have nothing to do with me. She'd talk to everybody else.
This in New York?
Yeah. And then I'd be humble one night, another, I'd be tough guy. Another. And finally, as a last resort, I started rapping about her being an actor. And she lit up. And she said she wanted to study with Lee Strasberg, only she couldn't get in. So I thought it was a girl. I didn't know who the hell Lee Strasberg was.
No way.
I found out who he was. I wrote a letter. Guy invites me over his house. The letter was, "Dear Lee, if an acting background is a prerequisite, read no further. Hello, if you're still with me, acting none, life credits plenty. A, first assault conviction. B, first baby born. C, first homicide indictment." All the way down, very flip. And at the end I said, "Seriously, Lee, I don't know if acting has anything for me or vice versa, but I'm treading water. See me." Calls me over his house.
That's a cool story.
And then I'm over his house. I never talked to strangers then at all. I was a pure street guy, you know. And so now knowing he fingerprinted Marlon Brando, Marilyn Monroe, you know, I was even more tight-lipped, you know. And he's trying to draw me out. And I'm giving him one-syllable answers. Yeah, no. And he says, "I don't think you could be an actor." So I got up to leave. He says, "Sit down." He says, "I never saw such tension in a man's face."
Wow.
He says, "But I feel you're an emotional library. Would you work with me?"
And Togsy, over the years, what's one of the most memorable interviews you've had?
Ooh, I'm a massive sports fan. So one night I was sitting at the airport and Roy Jones Jr., who's one of the greatest boxers of all time, like a 5-time world champion, walked by, and I didn't think it was him. I couldn't believe it. And I followed him into the gift store and said g'day, and then pulled the camera out and filmed with him. And that for me was like, he was like a god to me. You know, he's a legend. So that was probably the best one.
What's the worst one?
Oh, probably Warwick Kappa. No, I'm kidding.
So there we go, fun to look back on the first season, and of course in season 2, Warwick Kappa and myself co-hosting the show together. And you can imagine some of the funny stories behind that. But once again, a great opportunity to share all kinds of stories from all kinds of people and incorporate Skype and speak to people around the world. It was just unreal. And once again, thanks for watching. But to the reason for this episode, I found a DVD. The story behind it is crazy. One night in 2004, I'm waiting for a bus at Nobby's Beach. It was about 10:30 at night. The bus wasn't coming. There was another guy there waiting, and after a while we got chatting, and he introduced himself as Toby, and he said, "I'm an editor." I was like, wow, man, I've just come back from America with like all this footage. And you got to remember, in 2004, there was no YouTube, there was no Facebook. I don't think MySpace was invented yet. I didn't know what to do with all this footage. So we got talking about it. I said, yeah, I've just been to America and the UK. And he said, okay, well, show me the footage. So I brought it over to his house, gave him all these mini DV tapes, like a bunch of them. And he's a genius, Toby. He's since worked on big TV shows all around the world. And he put all this stuff together, put it on a website, and then gave me a DVD of it. And that's what I've recently found. So I thought I'd share that trip because it is crazy. LA, New York, Dublin, London, back to New York, and then LA, all in the period of a month, with some crazy stories in between. And when we come back, we'll kick off the journey in Los Angeles. Well, welcome back to the show and the start of this crazy adventure, and I guess I should explain why it all came around. In 2003, Australia held the Rugby World Cup, and I got to meet Irish Rugby Union captain Brian O'Driscoll. We had some fun nights out on the Gold Coast and got on great, and I told him that I'd travel for my show, and he said, if you ever come over to Ireland, look me up and you can probably crash with me. And I was like, that'd be pretty cool. And I'd met Isabel Dawson, Rosario Dawson's mum, not too long before that, so I was thinking in my mind, you know, that'd be a pretty good trip. And then bizarrely, a friend of mine worked for Kylie Minogue, so I thought if I could get Brian, Rosario and Kylie Minogue in a show, that's pretty cool. So that's what started the trip in my mind. It started out, first up, going to LA, of course, and you'll meet my friend Vinny, who I've known for years. I've stayed with him on and off. I've known him since 2000 and stayed with him pretty much every year. And he's like family to me. Always have a good time. Through him, I met Richie, who you'll see on the show. He's great mates with Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger, always in the press. and Lisa Gleave, an Australian swimsuit model, and a bunch of cool people. Random stuff along the way. That's where we begin our adventure in Los Angeles.
Hollywood, California. Fancy cars and movie stars, and the home of some really cool people.
Oh shit, they always fucking do this. And they always get that stupid fucking chain up there.
I've known Vinny for a few years now. He's just the coolest guy.
Good thing she beat though. I think I want to go this way. There's my movie, look. Night at the Golden Eagle.
Ah, there you go.
A lot of show business people became friends, and one of my best friends was a guy named Sonny Bono, or Sonny and Cher. And Sonny said, you know, why don't you become an actor? He said, I know you're a ham, you know.
I met Richie through Vinny. He's a classic. He took me for a drive through Beverly Hills in his Ferrari.
You have to wear a belt in these things, they fine you for the cops, no?
Well, not me. This is like the Heath Ledger equalizer. I started in the South Bronx. Started washing dishes, so if I can end up owning a few places in LA, a few places in Hawaii, go back and forth, I beat the system.
From there, we went back to one of Richie's restaurants and met Lisa, one of Australia's hottest swimsuit models now living in LA. We went back to Vinny's and had a chat. What is your dream? Are you living it now, or if it's not, what is something you'd like to do?
Definitely living my dream. I mean, gosh, how fantastic is it to be in a big city and doing a different job every day and traveling the world?
Later that night, I'd organised to meet Ruby. Her story is amazing. What sets you apart from the average Joe blogs?
I was not born a female. I'm a transsexual.
Wow. It's been like a moment for you, like looking at you now, you have no idea that you're once probably kicking a football around a yard, maybe, I don't know. In Australia, going for a surf and hanging out with the guys. The next day, Vinny dropped me off at the airport for my flight to New York. He was telling me about the legend of Babe Ruth, so I had to ask him about the Don.
Have you heard of Don Bradman?
Who?
Don Bradman?
Who's he? What, is he an Australian guy? You can hit the ball behind you.
If you get an edge, yeah.
The flight from LA to New York takes about 6 hours. Plenty of time for a chat. I couldn't believe the guy sitting next to me worked for NASA.
Every day you see them, so it's like, okay, well, it's just a stupid golf cart that is gonna go on Mars. But at first, yeah, it's incredible, and then the work those people have done, I mean, that's amazing.
So that was it. LA was done. Now it was time for New York.
Australia and France.
Yeah, so there you go. Fun to look back. And that golf cart he was talking about was actually the Mars rover, and how they were testing that out in the car park at NASA. So you never know who you're going to meet when you're traveling, and that's the gist of the show. That's why I love doing it. Now, New York, this story is unbelievably bizarre. How I met Isabel Dawson, before I went on my first trip traveling overseas filming in 2002, I was Googling, this is about like a day before the flight, I was Googling stuff, and I saw the New York Post. And I saw a story about Rosario Dawson and this building that they lived in. And there was some squabble about rent or something like that. And so flash forward a week in New York, I'm over there, and I'm walking through the Lower East Village with my friend Anthony, and we're crossing the street. And as we were crossing the street, I said, hey, do you know where Rosario Dawson lives by any chance? And he's gone, yeah, over there. Like literally, we turned around and he said, I know her mum. So he walked over and he yelled out to her mum, Isabel, and she stuck her head out the window, and I filmed with Isabel, and it was just an incredible story, and we stayed in touch. And that, like I said, was part of the reason to go on this trip. When I got there filming for this trip, she had a guy there called Dave, who you'll meet in this segment, and he was just an absolute classic. You'll meet my friend Anthony, and of course a bunch of other random stuff. The adventure begins in New York.
I first met Isabel in 2002 through the most amazing circumstances, a story in itself. I arrived in New York and went straight to her place. She had Dave there filming too. You'll meet him shortly.
Has pictures of Rosario.
Okay. Oh, you're gonna actually answer questions, right?
Well, yeah, I guess.
Okay. Be so blue.
No, it's hot. Okay, Celia Cruz is a song that I wrote for my godmother, Celia. La reina cantaba, llamaba la gente. The queen always sang, and she loved all of the people of the world.
Anthony's another mate I met while living in New York. He's an absolute classic, always got something on the go. Acting and painting. If something's happening in New York, then Anthony will definitely be amongst it.
just did the Rainbow Warrior, I call it. I was walking in Astor Place and I saw these guys throwing a 9x5 foot painting on a dumpster about 6 months ago. This is the bad. It looks like a bomb's going off. Under all my shit. It's definitely a piece of work.
And you carried that how many blocks?
About 20 blocks.
The next day it was time to catch up with Dave. He wanted to show me where he grew up. He's a really cool guy.
Hi everybody in Australia. My name is David Cruz. I'm from New York City, but my parents are originally from the Caribbean area. As you can see, my Caribbean shirt mates. If you're gonna make it in with the Australian crocodiles, you could definitely make it here.
The adventure continued to Spanish Harlem, where we met Roberto, the restaurant owner.
It's called La Fonda Boricua. It's nice, it's safe. Don't worry, fellas. You know.
I receive already people from Australia, and something I can tell about and I can say they are very wine testers. They really know about wines.
Walking the streets of New York, you can never know who you run into. Fellow Aussies can pop up anywhere.
Okay, I'm travelling around the world. Thought it'd take 20 years to travel around the world, so I left about 4.5 years ago and just haven't left the States, just enjoying it. So.
Just let me get this right, you thought it'd take 20 years to travel the world?
No matter what you do, you walk in any door, it's something completely different from something you did just before that.
Yes. From there, I crossed the street and caught up with another old friend who's been living the crazy life. His name's Thomas. A mate of mine, Thomas, who's from Australia but now in New York. Mate, where are we exactly?
This is Tompkins Square Park, Togsy.
So is this a place you usually come and hang out or what?
No, negative. We were just meeting a friend of ours, another Aussie guy, you know, Anthony Robb. We were just going to meet him out here.
Right, okay.
Mm-hmm. Shot a movie up in Vancouver, which is coming out soon. It's called Saved.
Okay.
Mandy Moore's in it.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
What do you play?
I play Jesus Christ. Funnily enough.
That's awesome, man. Did you do much research for that part?
Yeah, I did actually, all through my honeymoon. The longer my hair grew and the longer my beard grew, when I was in Barcelona and Spain, people really started calling me Jesus. And,
yeah, I can imagine.
And it was getting, yeah, I mean, you know.
Yeah, I do know. So it was goodbye New York and another 6-hour flight, but I couldn't wait to get to the start of another adventure.
Some fun memories to look back on. I'd met Thomas the year before in Australia, and he had the long hair and the beard, and he did look like Jesus, but I had no idea that he'd done a film. That's why I laughed so hard. But when we come back, we're going to go to Ireland, the very cool city of Dublin, and hang out with Brian O'Driscoll. That's coming up on the platform. Well, welcome back to the platform. Thank you for watching. This is where the story gets a little bit crazy, going to Dublin. Like I said, I met Brian O'Driscoll in 2003, and he kind of invited me over to Ireland. I probably didn't think I'd come, but I booked a ticket, and I told him, I only gave him about a week's notice that I was actually going to come, and I forgot, or I didn't realise, I should say, just how famous and huge he was at the time in Ireland. I mean, from Australia, you've got AFL, you've got tennis, you've got surfing, you've got all the different codes of footy. Over in Ireland, they've got their soccer, they've got hurling, and they've got rugby union. It is huge. And being a young guy and being the captain of the country, I think the week before I left, to be voted the sexiest man in Ireland. So it was pretty funny to just arrive, give him a call, and the adventure started.
I was so excited about being in Dublin. It's one of the coolest cities in the world. On the bus into town, I met Nate from America. How you doing, man?
I'm good. I don't know much about what's going on as far as, because I'm not as interested, because for me it's just like another thing that we're sticking our nose in someone else's business. I'll bitch about Bush. I don't know what I'm complaining about most of the time, but I just hate his fucking guts.
After brekkie, I grabbed a cab and headed out to Brian's place.
Are you a rugby fan?
No.
Not at all?
I don't follow sports at all.
At all? Wow. Okay.
So that puts the difference.
Oh, not really? I mean, hey, look, we're into different things.
If we crash this, I'm going to take the camera out with it so there'll be no record of that comment ever being said.
Brian O'Driscoll is one of rugby's biggest stars, a hero in Ireland and captain of the national team. I met him in Australia during the World Cup, and he's such a cool guy. It was awesome to go over there and stay at his place for a few days.
We're going to go to kind of where I first played rugby. Okay, that's 20
He went to his old school. It was crazy.
Look at these lads, straight in.
The times have changed. Just dropping some stuff in.
All right.
we going to go past any rooms where he spent detention?
He was never in detention.
He was never in detention. That's not what I heard in the car.
This is where you boarded?
Yeah, this is my 6th year boarding.
Like a case in the joint.
I'll be able to talk tomorrow on the pitch. I'll be hoarse while this talking. Guess the ball.
Well, who smokes here? Kids?
Oh, we used to like room 6 here. It was just a smoking room. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
While at the school, we sat down and had a chat.
This is the ground that I first played on. It's very pitch.
Is that weird now? I mean, honestly, to sit here years later and you're the captain of your country. That's a joke.
It's a bit bizarre if you put it that way. Looking at the size of the pitch, like it's the size of a stamp.
You kick from halfway. I mean, we're sitting on the halfway line. It looks like we could throw it over.
Oh. You would
then again, probably I couldn't. Sexiest man in Ireland.
Yeah, bollocks.
I can't believe I got voted that. I've just come in here. No, sorry, that's serious. Yeah. No, serious. I mean, how much crap did you? How much crap did you cop at training getting a tag like that?
I got a fair bit now, and every little last comment was so deserved. Strangely enough, it was against Australia that I got my first test as captain, and that was when November 2002. So
did you lose?
No, we won.
How'd that happen anyway?
November 2002. So I was 23 at the time.
Wow.
Jamie, that's weird.
We went back to his place where he gave me the personal tour.
Palace.
Okay.
Right. It's all just stuck together.
Chucked in. So, and I believe you got a nice backdoor area.
Well, you know, we're very house proud and we're also very garden proud. Sometimes we just come out here and just make daisy chains, you know.
When was the last time you guys actually did touch this out here?
This time last year,
Huh? Spread the wealth. We don't want to keep all these to ourselves. You want to get them around the whole area.
Who's that ugly guy in the paper?
After dinner, we chilled out and watched some TV. I made him put on some rugby videos to show me some highlights.
The Irish try record.
You got that now?
Yeah.
The next day, I went to a game, Lansdowne Road and true Irish rugby. It was an awesome atmosphere. After the game, I spoke with the coach, Aussie rugby legend Gary Ella.
Now, you yourself grew up where?
Ladbrokes in Sydney.
Okay, now I thought that's a lot different to Dublin, isn't it? How you enjoying it?
Haven't seen too much sun in the last few months.
Right.
But certainly, I mean, I'm enjoying it. I think Dublin is a great city to live.
The next day, I met the man totally responsible for Brian being here, his dad.
What sort of moments for you have been the proudest with regards to his football?
I have to say, believe it or not, the greatest kick I ever got was when he got capped at schoolboy level. That, to me, was the biggest thrill of my life. And then after that, you know, you just try and get things into perspective.
Even the kids got the chance to ask their hero some questions.
What age are you?
The top one.
What was your favourite try and why?
The one in the Lions tour against Australia in the first test.
And before you know it, Ireland was over. Next stop, London.
Super fun to look back on. Dublin is definitely one of the coolest cities in the world, and if you get a chance to go, you're always going to have a good time with the Irish people, and it was super fun meeting Brian's family and seeing what goes on. But this is where there's another crazy turn. Like I said at the beginning, I was hoping to go to London and hang out with Leanne, and I thought if I'm hanging out with Leanne, who works for Kylie Minogue, there's a very good chance I could film with Kylie Minogue for the show. That would be so cool. I've always loved Kylie. In fact, I still love Kylie. But I was thinking at the time this could be epic, and I rang her from the airport in Dublin, and when she got on the phone, she said, "Hey, where are you?" I said, "I'm in Dublin, I'm coming." She goes, "Oh my God, I thought it was next month. I'm in Melbourne." I was like, oh. So at the airport in Dublin, I'm like looking for change, and I called my friend Johnny, who I met at a children's camp in 1996. I was doing I think it was called Holiday Home Camp in Milwaukee. Crazy story. And I met all these international people, including Johnny. We'd stayed in touch. I told him about my predicament. I said, "Mate, I'm going to be there for a few days." He said, "Yeah, come and stay on my couch." And an adventure started with Johnny Webb in London.
I arrived in London with absolutely no plans. Lucky for me, an old mate was there to pick me up and let me stay for a few days. I met Johnny at a children's camp in Milwaukee in 1996. Johnny was showing me all the sights: Big Ben, Piccadilly Circus, and the West End. A devoted tour guide.
Well, I'll tell you what, Ange, you brought the weather with you.
Ever had an accident? I shouldn't ask that.
Yeah,
You
you know
say
what?
no.
You're in a hire car now because my car got written off the other day. It's very narrow, yeah. You get used to that. The only thing you can't get used to is the small babies that pop out every now and again.
He's an absolute classic, such a character, though he's not a big fan of the parking system.
You can't afford to stop off for 2 minutes to go and see someone you know, a friend, an old person maybe, you know, because the minute you come out, there's someone on the door on your car with a ticket. Bear with me for 1 sec. Gal, how you doing? All right. What are you up to? The real criminals is Tony Blair, yeah, and Jack Straw. The pair of them, yeah, including the Director General, Mr. Goldsmith, should all be in jail because these are the warmongers. I wonder if we can have a word. We're doing a documentary for Australian television, and what we're looking for, really, no, you can't just give us 2 minutes.
No, they're not allowed to, man.
Okay then.
That's cool. I understand.
Fair enough. You know, who is it that you actually work for? Is it the UK or is it for Germany or Holland? So you see what I mean? It's very aloof. You know.
Cruising around the streets with Johnny was a blast. He introduced me to Jimmy Campbell, and the adventure continued. Jimmy, how you doing, man?
Fine, man, fine. Enjoying the weather, you know, getting a little suntan and that back here. People's man is the word, you know. I bring people together to do things that I want. I mean, you know, some people will call this a dictator, but me, I just call it creativeness.
It was turning out to be a family affair, as I soon met his auntie.
That's my auntie's shop, June Perkins Interiors. All right, you're going to love this lot in here, mate. They are classic.
They sent me a parking ticket for £50. Yeah. So I rang up and queried it. And they said, well, we've actually got you on video. He said, you sat there for an hour, you made a phone, half an hour, you made a phone call, you had a cigarette and you opened the window. Oh, shit. Big Brother was watching me.
Yeah.
And while cruising the streets, we just happened to drive by Johnny's mum.
Hi, how you doing, Mum? This is my mate Andy from Australia.
Hello.
Is it? Hello there.
Hello.
He's an handsome boy, isn't he? Beautiful eyes.
I met another Aussie living her own adventure. I find there's like a lot of Aussies over here.
Oh, everywhere you go.
Really?
Yeah, we went to 2 weeks ago. We went to an Aussie rules game. We ended up running into 60 people from our hometown.
And while walking the Jubilee Bridge, we ran into Kate.
I play for 4 hours a day, and I can learn new tunes whilst I'm playing it, and I earn a living from it.
And so my adventure in London was over. Now it was a 24-hour flight back to Australia, but I can't wait to get back there again.
So there it is, fun hanging out with Johnny in a random way in London, and this is where things take another crazy twist, because you can imagine flying from Heathrow to Australia, it's a long trip. And as soon as I got back, I got a message from Isabel saying, Rosario's getting this award in New York in like a few days, you should be here to film. And I checked my bank account, I was like, oh, I don't know if I can do it, but I guess that's why they invented credit cards. So pretty much had a day or two at home before booking another flight. And when we come back, we're going to head back to New York and we'll meet Rosario Dawson on the platform. Well, welcome back to the show and the random adventure that continues to New York City. As always, I never know really what's going to go on, but obviously flying back there, I sent a bunch of emails, and in this clip, you'll meet Ian Lawless, one of the top Aussie models at the time, Henry Roth, who was my downstairs neighbour when I lived in New York for a couple of years. He ended up being a big TV star. He's on Studio 10 all the time in Australia, a great guy. He's in the clip, and Jeff Booth, who at the time was the general manager of the New York Post, and when I interviewed him, I found out that we actually went to the same school, PBC on the Gold Coast, and of course Rosario and Isabel Dawson. So it's super fun. Here we are in New York City.
I'd come back to New York to finally meet Rosario Dawson. You'll see her shortly. But on the plane from LA, I'd met Jodie, and she gave me a lift in her limo. She had a great story about her friend winning lotto.
They're playing the story that there's someone out there has this lucky ticket. Someone has the lucky ticket. She realized the numbers matched, and she goes, "No, I'm not fucking kidding. I won $13.9 million."
The next morning, I caught up with Ian, one of my best mates.
How are you? Good, buddy.
He's been killing it lately in the modelling world, and it was great catching up with him. So coming to New York, I mean, backtrack a little for us, like...
Man, it's the bizarrest story. All of a sudden I went from out of high school at 18 with no money to doing a commercial, and they just sort of said, okay, well, this is what you have to do, this is how much money you get, sign the contracts here. And it was a Snickers commercial, and they had the Rolling Stones, Satisfaction was the song. And all of a sudden they just put you on set and they go, okay, now go and act.
Rosario Dawson is one of the brightest stars in American cinema. She was getting an award this day from the people of the Lower East Side. She's such a beautiful person. And when her mum's around, then something's always happening.
It's going to be really great once I learn.
People in Australia would be just starting to see you in films, and I'm sure people in America are getting to know you and stuff. But your story quickly and how you came to be on the big screen, it's quite amazing, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. It's definitely one of those strange, like, got caught in a pizzeria kind of things. I was hanging out on my block, and Larry Clark and Harmony Korine, who are the director and writer, respectively, of Kids, came up to me and asked me if I wanted to be in their film and come in on it, and I said, sure. And it's sort of been what I've been doing ever since.
Can you remember some pretty weird lyrics you wrote as a kid?
Actually, it's a song I wrote with my brother and my mom when I was 10. Dump one eye, dump your other eye, pick your nose and stick it in your mouth.
Then it was back to Henry's, who was cool enough to let me stay. He's an awesome guy and my former neighbour. 26 Bank Street.
It's amazing, the symmetry of life, isn't it?
Television star, what is going on? What is going on with the world? But as though we didn't know, people in the mix, as though we didn't know Henry would get his big break in certain things. But tell people in Australia what you're doing.
Somebody from the E-Networks called me up and they said, listen, we've seen your work. We'd like you to audition for this job. And it's called Style Court. It's exactly like Judge Judy, but it's in fashion and you'd be the judge. And I'm thinking, that's perfect. This is one of my proudest moments in New York. I know that sounds really weird, but I played at this event called Swank, and that's me, Judge Henry Roth of Style Court.
That night I went cruising with Lyle in his brand new Mustang. We went for a drive up through Times Square. It was amazing at night. The next day it was up to see Jeff Booth, the general manager of the New York Post. I took a cab ride uptown.
What sort of people you have in the back here?
From A to Z, got him in the car, yeah.
Okay.
Sports figures.
What do you know about Australia?
Not too much except what Paul Hogan tells me.
Jeff lives on the 43rd floor of the Trump Tower building. It was an amazing view and a really cool chat. He actually grew up in the same town I did.
Well, I mean, New York is sold as the biggest and the best place on earth, and if you want to compete, then you've got to be the best of the best. And that's not true. I mean, people that live and work here in New York City are the same as people that live and work in Sydney or in Melbourne.
So you're going to give us a tour of the pad?
Come here. Yeah, you have to. You have to. Come here.
Aww. Oh, so it's a real bedroom with real clothes on the floor. That's amazing.
Front door, guest room, with the kiddos room.
Hello. What are you watching? Ah, Full House.
They really shouldn't have a television in their bed.
Yeah, that could be dangerous.
So New York was over, and it was time to go to LA.
So there you go, lots of laughs looking back, and it was time now to go back to Los Angeles. Of course, I'd sent a few emails. You'll meet Richie Palmer once again, Giuseppe Franco, who's one of the funniest guys you'll ever meet. If you ever go to Beverly Hills, you've got to go to his salon just to meet him. He's a classic. Liana. And then you'll see what happens when you take a camera and a tripod to a cafe on the Sunset Strip. Anything can happen. You meet some cool people. So we're back in Los Angeles.
This episode finds me back in LA, where everybody has a dream. I went to the local cafe and ran into Riley, a hot young actor. He had some really cool stories.
Good, mate, good.
Good, mate.
I love using the word mate, by the way.
How did you get into acting? Is it something you always wanted to do?
I just moved here actually to be a gigolo, and then all of a sudden they were like, hey, do you want to be on TV? I was like, yeah, sure. When I first moved here like 5 years ago, I used to have long hair, and I sometimes got mistaken for this other actor who was pretty popular at the time, and so I'm in this club, and this guy comes up to me. I don't even know who the fuck he was, and he just like goes to shake my hand, and I shake his hand, and there's like a big 8-ball of Coke.
Before I'd even finished my latte, I'd run into another crazy character. How are you going?
Good morning, matey. Man, with women like Elle Macpherson, how do you leave Australia?
There's some nice women here too, though.
She's got the finest piece of the best piece of ass I've ever seen in my life.
Hi to her mum, by the way. The next day I went for a drive with Artie, one of Vinny's best friends. We went to the cafe where Artie reflected on the good old days.
But the same friends of mine. It's me, Billy, Vinny Argero, this guy Billy in New York, Joey Marino, Nino. same guys I know all my life. You know, growing up in Brooklyn, it was like Vinny, all of us, we had a big gang called the South Brooklyn Boys. And subsequently, they wrote a book about us, a guy named Vinny Riccio and Bill Slocum. Tough gang. At one time, the gang was so tough, the cops would tell us, why don't you fight us and settle the other gangs? Give them a chance.
We just had an interview with
From there, it was back to Vinny's to get his view on the stories.
South Brooklyn Boys was a tradition. The guys were being groomed all the way up.
Right.
You know. And then we finally left because at one point they said we're going to draw straws, and whoever gets the short straw has to go and shoot one of these rival gang members.
The next day I went into Beverly Hills with Rihanna. We sat down in the park and had a chat. We've just been cruising the streets of Beverly Hills and it's pretty nice and some crazy traffic rules, right?
Oh, traffic rules? Oh, yes. Well, you know what? I made a couple of my own rules that are a little crazy, so I can't knock the... There's all different types of Buddhism. This is Nichiren Daishonin, Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, and Andrew, honestly...
You know, it wasn't too long ago this park received worldwide attention.
We are both fans of George Michael, but
like huge!
this is the place where George got arrested. And I hope to interview George, so if George watches this, I don't want him to be angry at me, but hey, but this is where it all happened.
Going into Beverly Hills with Vinny is always fun. Eating pizza at Richie's place. This time I met Giuseppe Franco. Watching him and Richie together is such a laugh.
Famous hairdresser to the stars. There's everybody that's anybody in Hollywood. Right. And he's a fag, so.
Get out of my fucking spotlight. Get the table. Did you already do your spot? So let me know.
I was already on.
Get out of the fucking picture. Just focus on me.
Hi, I'm Giuseppe Franco. I'm here with Tuggaruski. Hey, Tug.
Hey, man. How you doing?
I'm here with my girlfriend, Richie. Richie. Hi. If you don't have a dream, you're pretty much fucked.
I had one more day in LA, but I knew that day would be a whole lot of fun.
So there you go, always fun being in Los Angeles and always fun hanging out and staying with Vinny. It always feels like anything's possible when I've got a camera there and shooting. I mean, I just travel around with just a tripod, a little camera and my MacBook, and it feels at times like anything's possible. And when we come back, we're going to wrap it up with something pretty crazy. I won't say anything until we come back from the break. You're watching The Platform. Well, welcome back to the show and a very, very special ending, maybe even a happy ending. When I found out that I was going to come back to New York and meet Rosario and do the filming, and then I was going back to LA, obviously before flying back home, I sent an email to Wicked Pictures, who were at the time, and they probably still are, one of the biggest adult movie makers in the world. And I'd sent an email saying, you know, look, I'm going to be in LA, is there any chance I can interview some of your adult film stars? And when I got to New York, I think it was the morning I was flying out, I got an email back from the publicist at Wicked Pictures at the time, and he said, you know what, you're in luck. It's the first day shooting. I think they had a HIV scare or something, and the industry was shut for months. And he goes, it's the first day shooting, and you're welcome to come and interview some of the stars. I was like, oh man. So I told Vinny that, and he of course wanted to come with me, but the funny thing was, when I arrived on set, they're like, oh, you're Togsy, you're from the radio? I'm like, yeah. Oh, you got a video camera? I'm like, yeah, I'm filming. And they're like, oh, no. We thought it was just going to be audio. But I met the director, I met some of the people there, and he said, you know what, just shoot whatever you want. So I did. And it's a pretty fun adventure, and here it is in LA.
This is a special episode of the show. I got to spend a day on a Wicked Pictures porn shoot.
Another hard day in the job.
Vinny and I drove up to $1 million mansion to see just what goes on.
I'm recording.
On the set, I met Jessica Drake, one of the hottest porn stars in the world. We had a chat by the pool.
I'm a Texas girl.
How does a young Texas girl end up in Hollywood working in the adult industry? I'd love to know that.
Luck.
Really? Something you always wanted to do?
Originally I wanted to feature dance.
It was great seeing what goes on. I spoke with Shelby Stevens, the makeup artist, about her time in front of the camera.
I didn't not tell my family because it was something I was ashamed about. It was more that sometimes ignorance is bliss. Personally, I don't believe you should be able to come in and do adult movies until you're 21. It doesn't seem right to be able to do a gangbang and not be able to have beers with those people afterwards.
Vinny seemed to be having fun. I got to meet Mike Horner, an actor I'd seen more times than I probably should.
Now, I've got to tell Australia that the very first adult film I ever saw was about 14 years of age.
you were in.
Yeah.
So it's cool today to actually meet you. And so you've obviously been in the business for quite a while, right? How long has it been?
27 years.
Wow.
Long time.
What's it like when you run into, say, someone you work with, like in a social environment?
Well, it depends on where you are. I've run into people in places even like churches and stuff like that, and that's a different way you would deal with somebody. The director of a porno movie, he's directing a mainstream movie, and he goes, "Oh, you're here for the I don't know you."
And I spoke with a director who'd spent many years as a porn star himself.
Started out as a male stripper. From there, kind of, you go in the little the circle of magazine/porno people, and so.
Okay. You remember like the piece of Resistance?
That's actually how I started directing, because I've been doing so many of those movies. It was like I'm embarrassed to bring them home to my boys. You know what I mean? I'm embarrassed to watch them myself. So I said, there's got to be a better way of doing this.
So there it is. That was The Trip from 2004, and a big thank you to Toby Cook for making those clips all those years back. I mean, obviously, each episode I shot felt like a half-hour episode because there were a lot of other people featured, and of course the interviews run for a while, so you can see them all pretty much at the web show, youtube.com/The Web Show, all one word. All the interviews, I guess, are on there. And I thought, seeing as though I started off this episode talking about one of my favourite interviews, which was meeting Roy Jones Jr. at the airport at LAX one night, I thought I'd finish with that. So this is what happened. Ironically, it's the first time ever, seeing as I used to travel with a tripod and just put the camera on it, I'd already checked it in. So when I got the chance to interview him, I was like, oh, what am I going to do? But I held the camera in my left hand with the microphone, and that's why I keep looking back at the camera. But I've done a lot since then. But here we are, the first time I did that with the great Roy Jones Jr.
Alright, so sitting here at LAX, having a bad night because my flight's been delayed, but then one of my all-time heroes walks by, and that is the man I've always wanted to interview actually in boxing, which is Roy Jones Jr. Roy, how you doing?
What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm good. Where are you flying to?
I'm flying back home to Pensacola, Florida.
Now, I ask a lot of people, man, about their dreams and stuff. Do you feel like you've lived your dream, or if not, what's the grand plan dream for you?
No, I lived my dream.
Yeah?
Over and over again. I mean, I never dreamed of becoming heavyweight champion, and one night I did have a dream as a professional fighter to become heavyweight champion. I did it, so what else could I do?
Was it like when you had that fight with John Ruiz, which I watched in Australia, man, that was just unbelievable. Like, was that just something, like what age did that start for you? When you thought, I mean, there's a great scene in the movie Raging Bull where they're talking, Jake LaMotta saying, man, Joe Louis is a heavyweight, you're a middleweight, it's impossible. You proved that possible. Like,
I definitely proved that possible, and what happened was about 1995 or 96, I just felt like, you know what, if you this good, fight for the heavyweight title. And I started trying to get Holyfield to fight me, but he wouldn't fight me, so I waited till I finally got my opportunity, and I took it.
Right. And so was boxing something that you were always going to get into? I know your father trained you as a youngster and stuff.
Boxing was always my dead love off the top. I just knew I could do it.
And you've been in the Matrix?
Yeah, I was in the Matrix too. I actually shot down in Australia, yep.
Do you think that, like, within, particularly what you've proved, that really anything's possible, right?
Anything is possible. You should never let nobody give you boundaries. Only God should give you boundaries.
Right. Like, if you're talking to young kids out there, and regardless if it's boxing or if it's just life in general, do you just agree that it's just hard work that's got you to where you are? I mean, obviously, you're very talented, but you work hard as well, don't you?
Yeah, but off the top, you got to have first faith in God, then faith in yourself. And if God bless you with the talent, then you got to take and work 5 times harder to get where you want to get, because there are going to be some low spots, there are going to be bad spots for you waiting already, but you got to keep working hard to persevere and overcome when you get in those low spots. And with hard work, anything is possible.
Nice, man. Well, I got to say that to sit here in an airport and have a bad night and then to have one of your heroes walk by is kind of nice. So it's great to meet you, one of the greatest of all time, and thank you, man.
Thank you, and I enjoy it, and thank y'all, Australia, for always supporting me. Peace.
Rock on.
So there it is, wrapping everything up. Thank you so much for tuning in and all your support during the season of the show, and the first season too. A big thank you to Michael Kazilny, Warwick Kappa, Cam, our production boss, all the staff that worked on the show, and Jeremy that made the website. It's been super fun. Love making it, and hopefully we can come back and do it again. Really appreciate you watching the show, and thanks for watching.